A while back, I built the Deposition Sound FDMGO speakers. They're desktop speakers. Really like the way they sound. They perform very well. It's a really well put together kit. So today I am going to build the FDMS8 subwoofer that goes along with them. So let's start off by taking a look at what's in the kit, and then we'll start putting them together. First thing is your subwoofer speaker. It is a chunky 4 ohm, 8-inch driver. This is by Dayton Sound, which is a very well-known company within the sort of DIY audio arena. The kit comes with this 100-watt amplifier. So just real quickly going through, you have your mains power input, the main power switch, your line level inputs on RCA jacks. If you are using a surround processor where you have a sub or LFE channel, that will go into the white input. If you're feeding a stereo signal in, obviously that goes in both. There's a bass boost, which adds a little bit extra low end, I believe down around 40 hertz. This is the power mode switch, so you can either turn the subwoofer off, you can turn it on all the time, or if you put it in the center, that is auto, so that if the amplifier doesn't sense any sub input, it will go to sleep after 15 minutes. And I believe this only draws about half a watt when it's in sleep mode, so that's nice. You have a phase reverse switch so that the subwoofer is either in phase or 180 degrees out of phase with your main speakers. You have a sweepable crossover, so you can set this from anywhere from 40 hertz to 200 hertz on your low end. So you can adjust this to match whatever speakers you're pairing it with. Finally, there is your level adjust, and there's a power LED. You get 4 bags of fiber fill that will go inside the cabinet for sound dampening. And then there's the hardware bag, which has heatset inserts, screws, and rubber feet, as well as your Deposition Sound sticker. The enclosure for the subwoofer is pretty big, so it's separated into 4 pieces. I'll try and bring this back. So this should be printable, I believe, on any printer with at least a 235 by 235 bed. 250 is probably a little more comfortable, but I believe you can do it on a 235. So if you've got one of these sort of mid-sized bamboos, that should work. As with the FDMGOs that I previously put together, the files are very well laid out. There's no supports needed, and these things are just really big and chunky. So step 1 in doing this project is going to be gluing the 2 halves of the bottom together, the 2 halves of the top, and then we'll be joining those. The manual calls out that it's very important that, unlike when we're normally working with CA glue, where you want to use as little as possible, you want to use a little bit more on this. We're relying on that glue to basically form a seal in between these guides and the rest of the part. So we don't want any air gaps where these fit together. Otherwise, you could get whistling. So we're going to make sure we've got a good continuous bead along the inside corner of this rail, and then also on any of these interior mating surfaces. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the 2 bottom quarters together and the 2 top quarters, and then I'll jump back here when I'm ready to put the 2 halves together. Now that I have the top and bottom subassemblies glued together, it's time to join them and build the entire cabinet. Let's take a look at what we need to glue here. So this is the top half. Now we still need to do our glue inside this guide. You also need to make sure to put a nice bead of glue around the port so that when those ports mate together, they'll be sealed. You also are going to want to put glue in this area, in this cross beam here, so that you get a really good physical bond between those two halves. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this together and then try and give you a look. This cabinet's pretty large, so it's kind of difficult to get a good view here on the benchtop, but I'll do my best. Now that I've given the glue a little time to dry and had a sandwich, I'm ready to start the next phase, which is putting in the heat set inserts to mount the subwoofer and the amplifier. It's pointed out that you should have the inserts ideally a little bit below the surface. So where most times we try and get the inserts flush with the surface, here you actually want them to be a little bit below. And the reason for that is just like we wanted to make sure that all of our seams were fully sealed so that air couldn't escape from there. The speaker and the amplifier both have a foam gasket where it's going to mount into the cabinet, but we want to make sure that those mating surfaces between the cabinet and the components are as flat as possible. So by putting the inserts just a little bit below the surface, we'll be able to get a much better seal with that foam gasket and avoid any air leaks, because the only place we want air to exit from inside the cabinet is through the ports. So I'm going to go ahead and mount those heat inserts and then be back here with the installation steps. Now I have my heat set inserts in. You can see some of them there. That's for the foot, and we've got the sub speaker mounts there. And looking at the top, we've got the M3s in for the amplifier plate. While you're installing the heat set inserts, pay attention to the mating surfaces anywhere where these quarters come together. Where the sub speaker itself mounts, there was a little bit of excess glue that got squeezed out from in between some of the parts that then dried on that mating surface. And I went back with a razor knife and trimmed that down, just as we needed to have the inserts a little bit below the surface. To make that as flat as possible, you also want to make sure you don't have any glue boogers dried on the top there, because again, that's going to deform that mating surface and there's more of a chance for any kind of air leak. So the next step is to take our 4 bags of fiberfill and put that void fill inside the cabinet. Same as I did with the FDM Geos, we'll take this out, tease it open so that it fills more of the space. One thing to keep in mind is on the top of the cabinet, which is the side that is away from where the speaker mounts, inside here are the openings for the ports, which come out on the bottom here. So make sure that you're not blocking those holes. You want the fill around that. So I'm going to go ahead and put all this in there, and then we'll get to the next step. Again, you want to use roughly 1 bag for each quarter of the speaker. You don't want it to be compressed as much as you can. You really want it to be kind of fluffy, because that's going to help stop those standing waves. Flip this around, and I'm sorry you can't see this, but now I'm filling in where the speaker is going to mount. Now for the next bag. And be aware this stuff does get all over the place, so I'm going to have to go back with some air and blow this clean. We'll put some in here where the speaker goes. And remember, the speaker is going to displace a fair amount of the space here on the bottom of the cabinet. But try and get around the ports. And I'm feeling for where those port inlets are to make sure that I'm not getting any of the fill in that area. With the cabinet sitting this way with the amplifier hole up, one side has the port entry at the top, which is right here, and the other is at the bottom in this space. So that'll give you a guideline of where you should be filling and not filling. Everything's nice and fluffy. And we're ready for the amplifier. So, get the amplifier plate. Need to get speaker lead pulled clear. And the first thing I need to do is I'm going to have to snake this cable through past the brace so that that will come out the speaker hole, which it does. Got plenty of travel there. And now we take our M3 hardware and install the plate. And I'm just going to get these started for now. It is recommended that you use a cross tighten pattern, which we'll do here in a sec. It's also a good idea to leave these a little loose until you have all of the screws in, just in case the plate is cocked in any direction. You don't have to worry about, oh, well, now this screw doesn't want to go in because the hole is off center, so I have to loosen something up. So a little bit better to just get the screws started in. Once all of them are in, then you can go back and see about tightening them down, which I will do now. Okay, so I'm just going to start going around. We'll just get these not super tight, but we're just going to start tightening them down. Okay, so those are pretty tight, and now I'm going to give a final tighten. You don't want to torque these to the point that you're pulling those inserts out, obviously. Sort of tightening them until they really just feel well seated. With that done, it's just about time to install the speaker. You need to cut the connectors that were factory installed from the speaker wiring, hook that up to the subwoofer, and then put it in place. So let's do that. The speaker wires come with some spade terminals from the manufacturer. We need to get rid of those. And strip about 1/2 inch from the insulation. Give that a nice twist so that it doesn't fray. So now I'm going to go ahead and connect the speaker and drop it in place and get it screwed in. Unfortunately, I won't be able to do this on camera because my overhead camera isn't tall enough and you won't be able to see it from the front. Just make sure that you connect the red wire from the amplifier to the red terminal here on the subwoofer, and the same with the black. Then put the speaker in place and do the same kind of get all the screws in place, then start making multiple passes going back and forth to get it attached. All right, so there is the speaker installed. One thing that I found while I was putting this in and putting the screws in, the speaker has a metal flange on the outside that as you put the screws in, they kind of hit that flange. So what I did is I would put in a screw until it was below the top of that flange, then would move to the next one. And I found that that helped kind of get the speaker into position, then went back once I had all of the screws in and started doing a cross pattern tighten to just fully mount that and compress that foam gasket. So that should be sealed up. And at this point, the last thing is just to install the feet. So you have two options for feet. There's this one, which is designed to go on, and then there's a rubber pad that is put here so that it doesn't mar your floor. Or there is this one, which just comes to a point and is more of a spike when you are putting the subwoofer on carpet. We're going to be using this at the shop in one of our retail spaces where there's carpet, so I'm going to go with the spiked feet. And this is really easy. You just get your M5, get that through. There's an indentation here that fits the shape of the foot. So just line that up and tighten this down. And it's that easy. So I'm going to get the rest of the feet put on, and then I'm going to take this into the shop, hook it up with the desktop speakers, and get it tuned and see how it sounds as a whole system. All right, Manny, you ready to test a sub? We're here at the shop. We have the subwoofer here hooked up to our little test rig. And I have my iPad, which is connected to the amplifier with Bluetooth. We're not doing anything too critical here, so I am going to start. That is the speakers just with some pink noise and no subwoofer. And you can see here, there's a hump. It looks like, well, you have to look right around 60 Hertz. So that is just these FDMGO speakers. And now let me turn the subwoofer on. Now you can see the frequency is really going down to about 33. So we've got a lot more low-end extension. Overall, this is a really nice subwoofer. It sounds great with music in a stereo system. You would probably want to do a little bit of tweaking to get that ultra low end if you were using it in a home surround system, to get the sound effect thumpiness. But if you're looking to add a little more bottom end to your FDM Geos, it's definitely recommended. So I hope you enjoyed checking out the build of these Deposition sound speakers and the subwoofer, and we will have more projects coming to you soon.